welcome to Overdrive. You're watching the show with me, Soini Das. It's been a week of firsts. BMW has just launched their first ever 2 Series Gran Coupe in the country, starting at 39.3 lakh rupees for the Sportline trim, and it goes up to 41.1 lakh rupees for the M Sport trim. We did think before the car was launched that it would be the most affordable BMW that you can buy in the country today, but it has been priced close to the X1, so that isn't really, so it's a tad bit expensive. But Rohit gets you his review to let you know whether it's worth all that money.
We've often said this, the Indian market works in its own unique way, which also means that what may work in the global market may not necessarily appeal to India. One of the best examples of this fact is the compact luxury segment. Now, we don't usually associate luxury with the hatchback body style, which is the reason why the A-Class or the 1 Series didn't do too well. Then there was the CLA, that beautiful 4-door coupe body style, but even that didn't appeal to the Indians the way Mercedes-Benz hoped it would. Now, that is one of the reasons why the new CLA is nowhere on the roadmap for Mercedes-Benz India. What they have coming instead is the A-Class limousine, because they believe that there is space and there's more appeal for the classic 3-box sedan body style. But then again, the Audi A3 was a classic sedan that only made that initial splash and then just disappeared into the blind spot of the Indian clientele. But so did the A4. So let's just blame that on the design. BMW thinks that they can do better at this body style. In fact, BMW knows how to handle the entry-level clientele. They have done this quite successfully. They have the entire Mini lineup to address this particular client. They have the BMW X1, which is the best-selling crossover in this segment. And now they think that this addition, a 4-door Gran Coupe, could also appeal to many. Say hello to the new BMW 2 Series. The 2 Series is a new model line for India, but in the BMW universe, this is the second generation of it. Despite marrying the styling cues of the 8 Series Gran Coupe to the compact size derived from the 1 Series hatchback, the 2GC has ended up looking quite blunt, and the face has a very upright and chubby appearance to it. Blame it to the Z4 or 8 Series inspired headlights, the detailing of which makes them look more vertical than horizontal. Adding further to that effect is the kidney grille, which sits lower than the headlamps. I can't believe I'm saying this, and don't call me a hypocrite for saying this, but I think this is one of those BMWs which would actually look better with a larger and a wider grille on it. I also feel that the bonnet shut line should have been set a little forward, a little more discreetly than what it is right now. And a final bit of complaint is with the headlamp. While they look fine from where you are looking, but from the side profile or the rear 3/4, it's got that ungainly bulge to it, much like the CLA. The side profile has balanced visual proportions, and with the 18-inch wheels and the fat 225 section tires, it even looks like a premium sedan. I think the best angle to view the 2 Series from is the rear 3/4. It looks like a proper sports sedan fit to wear that Bavarian roundel. Of course, there are those big air dams, all that sporty drama that's happening up front with those M Sport bits. But I think even with its simplistic styling, even with the lack of all that drama, the tail end looks a lot sportier than the front. The rear looks dramatic in its own way, with the 2 functional exhaust barrels, the sleek diffuser, the even sleeker tail lights, and the gloss black applique running between them. The conventional boot lid hides away a sizable 430 litres of cargo space and has a 40-20-40 split on the foldable seats for additional space or versatility. And despite the coupe roofline, ingress and egress is actually not a problem at all. Of course, for taller passengers, this is going to be a bit of a squeeze, but for my height of 5'8", the headroom is actually not quite bad. I have about 2 inches of space over my head. Of course, like most coupes, there's a bit of space that is scooped out here, but you can only fit 2 adults and a kid in here because the panoramic sunroof doesn't extend all the way to the back, and yet you have a nice and airy feel in here. Now, in terms of the space, foot space is quite good. Knee room is excellent. This driver seat is set to my driving preference, and under thigh support is not bad at all. The rear seat gets 2 USB-C ports and AC vents too, but this cabin comes with a 2-zone climate control only, and it's primarily the front seat occupants that it wants to pamper. The front seats are comfortably large and roomy, and the cushioning is comfortable for long-distance journeys. Because the 2 Series is targeted at those with a younger bent of mind, it's got a sporty interior. Of course, it's typical BMW, so you get a driver-centric dashboard, everything is angled towards the driver, and that's very good news. Adding further goodness to that effect is the presence of ambient lighting. You get the BMW Assistant, the voice assistant, and you also get gesture controls, which up until now were only restricted to the higher-end cars from BMW. You also get a digital instrumentation, again inspired by the BMW Z4, which means it gets the reverse tachometer. You can also specify the car with a heads-up display. It's an optional extra. And then you also get this infotainment screen. It's touchscreen. It's not the biggest in the business, but it is very crisp, very easy to read because it is angled towards the driver, and it's got a very slick response as well. What I also like is it gets wireless Apple CarPlay, which means you also get a wireless charger, and I really like the placement of it. As of now, the BMW 2 Series is only offered in India with a diesel engine. It's the familiar 2-litre 4-cylinder turbocharged engine. It's in the familiar 190 PS tune as well, and in this little package, it's quite explosive. The transversely mounted diesel has exceptional refinement levels, and the 220D M Sport tested here managed a 0 to 100 sprint of 7.7 seconds in our test. You wouldn't really have to look at the spec sheet or really have more talent than these onboard electronics to know that this is a front-wheel driven car. Now that is something that has upset a lot of purists in the past as well. Every time BMW does a front-wheel driven car, we've seen that with the X1. However, with the new age electronics, it's actually not that bad a thing. The engine is mated to a piece of tech that BMW calls the ARB, or Actuator Contiguous Wheel Slip Limitation System, which essentially controls understeer that results out of excessive power or torque that is fed to the front wheels. It is a common problem with front-wheel driven cars, but with new age electronics that can work faster than ever and using new age sensors, the car's ECU can prevent or preempt excessive understeer, meaning you don't have to be too measured with the throttle all the time. I quite like the way the gearbox is tuned and the way it responds to changing throttle inputs, whether you're driving in the city, out on the highway, or on the twisties. It feels a little bit more responsive in its tuning compared to what we've experienced in the X1, and that's a very good feeling. The gearbox also gets a coasting function when you're on the highway, and that essentially helps this car get a phenomenal fuel economy as well. This is of course a diesel, so compared to what the petrol would manage, it will certainly give you a better range and better economy. But I like how the gearbox has been tuned and how relaxed this engine runs. The gearbox isn't as intuitive as the ZF transmissions in the higher spec BMW sedans, but this icing unit seems to be tuned for slightly quicker responses than before. There are driving modes of course, but the most basic kit from the BMW universe. So you get the Eco Pro mode, you have the Comfort, and you have the Sport. Now why am I switching between modes if I'm on the twisty roads? Why am I not just sticking to the Sport mode? Well, that's because the power delivery in the Comfort mode is actually a lot cleaner and more linear as compared to what the Sport mode manages. There are some tight switchbacks around here on the roads that I'm driving where in the Sport mode the car tends to have a torque steer despite all those electronics, and that's sort of killing the fun. The Comfort mode still makes it a lot more enjoyable because you don't have that sudden surge of torque coming in. It doesn't feel a little too eager, a little too enthusiastic when you're driving around tight switchbacks. While the 2 Series is targeted for those with a sportier bent of mind, its suspension is set up for a relatively cushier ride. There are no adaptive dampers to firm things up, but I doubt if you will complain about the stock setup. I quite like the feel of the brakes, and even on speed breakers, which you're going to encounter often like I just did, it's not a big worry. What you have to be careful about are the low-profile wheels on poor road conditions, but these again are premium car tantrums one cannot avoid in India, and it is a caution that you have to exercise for being a part of the luxury club. In a nutshell then, the 2 Series is certainly a better buy than the CLA was because it has a sprightlier engine, better dynamics, and a more comfortable cabin. Furthermore, it has enough tech to keep you entertained and ensure that you don't feel shortchanged for the Bavarian badge. It is also more accessible than a BMW X1 diesel, which makes it a sweet deal that will attract a lot of newcomers to the brand.
We have a more detailed review of the BMW 2 Series Gran Coupe on our YouTube channel. If you have any comments or any queries regarding the car, you can drop in a line and Rohit will answer them for you on our page as well. Time for us to take a quick break here on the show. Coming up on the other side, we'll acquaint you with the iconic